Hey there. This is a build that focuses on causing high elemental damage over time effects through the loop of shoot reloading stelliums, a type of Male 1 shotgun, and the usage of the high caliber firmware, which lets the splash hit a second time and apply another damage over time effect. This setup was initially inspired by Girthquake's Dot Shot Amon, with the high caliber tech being my main addition. Anything involving Protean Cell and dots comes from him, so check out that build if you're interested in Amon content. Here we'll be relying on some specific gear, including purple weapons and purple class mods. We'll be trying to make the best out of the Prismatic Ichor skill, but this is also a very buggy and inconsistent skill depending on how you use it. More on that later, we'll be working around it. Here you can see the high caliber firmware allowing us to shoot through the dummy and get a secondary damage over time effect. It is very important to keep this tech in mind when trying to kill bosses as fast as possible with our damage over time effects. Here on this Radix fight that we can use as an example, you can see I shoot through his feet so that the splash hits a second time, and therefore we apply a second dot through that splash. This build also has two other variants available on the Mobalytics written guide. The variant I'll be showing here has the highest peaks in terms of damage, but is also the one that's more mechanically involved and requires some working around the Prismatic Ichor bugs. The other two variants will be there. The reason I won't be showing them here is because I don't want the video to be extremely long and over-explained, more than it already probably is. So check the guide out if you're curious about playing a red build with this or another variant that can use either action skill. So before we get into the skill trees, let's explain the Prismatic Ichor Bug. Here on this clip, you can see I have nothing on except what I need to proc a guaranteed Prismatic Ichor, so that being my enhancement, my stellium, and Prismatic Ichor itself. You can see me proc a double shock dot, then I wait out the cooldown and proc a secondary red dot on my shock dot. So those both worked fine as long as I waited for the cooldown. Now watch what happens with Spectres. The bug is that Prismatic Ichor's cooldown just resets incessantly as long as you're applying another dot, and therefore it doesn't allow you to keep reapplying it unless you wait out that cooldown. So the Spectres not only rob our Prismatic Ichor dot with their tiny damage, but they also keep it from being reapplied because of the constant dots they proc on enemies, and that's what we have to work around. I'll be starting with the gear this time around because it's very crucial to the way this is played. But the main thing we care about here is the interaction between the stellium, Male 1 shotgun, and our enhancement, the prime potency effect. Through these we reload and guarantee a status effect. That way we can apply the very high damage over time effects of the stellium without having to invest in any chance for it. The other weapons we care about here is mainly something to cover for long range weakness, other stelliums of different elements, and a kinetic weapon, any kinetic weapon, just to help you summon kinetic specters when needed. For our rep kit, we are using triple bypass with amp, just because amp is on shot and will boost our damage over time effects. For ordnance, just something that helps you deal with Vile Crystal enemies is fine. I like Slippy, but you can use something else. Just keep in mind that dots from grenades can steal your Prismatic Ichor proc, just like your Spectres can. For our class mod, I heavily recommend the Alchemist with as much Prismatic Ichor as you can find, with the secondary stat rolls being elemental damage and status effect damage. Of course, this being a purple means it's not exactly easy to find, so you always have fallback options, and if you end up using any of the other variants available on the written guide, you can also use a commander with as much infusion you can get. But the ultimate fallback choice is of course Team Witch with either of elemental or status damage rolls. These will also make gameplay smoother because of the shield regen, which is one weakness of the build when not using Team Witch, because you won't have that much amp uptime, and if you end up using Protean Cell, everything becomes a race against time when bossing. And speaking of shields, your shield choices are any imp shield, can be a purple energy shield, can be a guardian angel, can be the what's for dinner. I just have my what's for dinner here, but it can really be any imp shield. And this is the safer, less mechanically intense option. But if you want to go all in with the gameplay loop, you can try Protean Cell for bossing. With the purple class mods, this really turns into a race against times because you have no way to regen this, so the shield's basically telling you to end the fight as quickly as possible, or otherwise that damage will just run out. The good thing about Protean Cell is that the 40% bonus shock it has applies to all of our dot damage, so it'll apply to impact damage and individually to each of our dots, so that really helps when you get a bad elemental matchup, because that 40% will really make even our bad dot matchups really eat through shields, for example. As for our enhancement, you mainly care about having prime potency here. The second effect can be transfuser, can be synthesizer, can be mixologist. Synthesizer would be my ideal here, but I don't really have a great one. But transfuser works really well for mobbing, and sometimes not so well. It has kind of a small radius, but when it does work, it's pretty funny and pretty good. As for stat rolls, you really care about having gun damage and shotgun damage, because those are applied on shot on enhancement and will boost your damage over time. You can also dream of a purple prime potency enhancement that has gun damage, shotgun damage, and weapon equip speed or shotgun equip speed. That would be a very nice row to have, and the equip speed would really smooth out the gameplay loop. As for our firmware, the main thing you care about here is having 3 out of 3 high caliber. That allows our shot to pierce the enemy. The initial impact of the shot will apply a dot and trigger Prismatic Ichor. Then when the splash hits the ground, it will apply another of our gun's dot, making this a very deadly combo with the Stellium. As for the other firmware, you can really use anything you want here. I have one airstrike to give us more leniency with the Stellium splash radius, and one God Killer, which is just some bad soup, but it's kind of what was available, honestly. You can have heating up here from our reload or anything else you want. 2 out of 3 airstrike is actually 10%, and splash damage on this does not boost our status damage, so not exactly a great pick here. So I kept only 1 out of 3 here. As for our skills, in Green Tree I have 1 out of 3 guns and needles just to help us with the rep kit sustain. And make sure you have the amp available in case something stronger shows up when mobbing. And the rest is in Blue Tree. Idle hands just to smooth out that reload and make combat better. I had 3 leftover points which I did put in Sanguine Fiends just to help with sustain. Max Spartans of Suffering because it's status damage. Here you can pick between Grave Fiends or Grave Quickening. Really up to you if you feel like you need the cooldown or not. 1 Blood Sacrifice does help with keeping these skills up during mobbing, but again up to you if you want to have this. Max Prismatic Ichor, of course, is the star of the show, even though buggy. This is a really powerful skill. It'll get even more interesting with the bleed fixes. And then we max out King Suffering because it's a large DPS boost to our dots. Necrosis further boosts our main damage over time we'll be using, which is corrosive, by a lot. I max out Burning Attunement because I want to get down to Burnt Offering and Grim Reaper, but also because Burning Attunement lets us swap to an incendiary weapon after we've applied our dots and benefit from that crit damage on the currently occurring effects on the boss. So it's a pretty cool way to use this attunement. Recurrence I grab just to move down the tree. I don't grab Reverberations because that would give our Reapers a bonus element, which is another chance at them stealing our Prismatic Ichor. And then maxed out Burnt Offering, which boosts one of our weaker dots when facing high armor, high shield enemies, so it helps a bit against that, especially when you get a bad roll on the Prismatic Ichor dot. So you might roll fire against armor and shield and have to get through that, and this helps offset that a bit. For our capstone, we do get Grim Reaper. The Reaper itself is pretty meh, but the passive effect where you can spawn another Reaper when you kill an enemy that's being drained is pretty useful for just general mobbing stuff. So it can really sustain your Reapers through multiple areas. We pair that with the Coven Augment, which further boosts the sustain of the Reapers and lets us spawn Spectres for specific situations where we want more crit chance for our dots. That would be mainly for bossing. You can use Spectres for mobbing if you want. I found that to be kind of overkill, and then you just end up with more situations where Prismatic Ichor is stolen from Vex. But you have that choice if you want. As for specializations, you mainly care about the best defense And then the rest is kind of whatever you want. You can grab utility or defense. Even the best defense is not that useful here because we might be getting shield drain from Protean Cell if you end up using that. But then again, you have many options in terms of class mods and shields, so it'll get used no matter what. And then the rest is really what I said, is just utility or defense, up to you. I grab Bullet Train just to further boost our impact damage a little bit. This won't apply to damage over time because the gun damage here is the type of gun damage that applies on hit, and therefore will not boost our status damage. As for our final slot, if you really want damage, you can go Compounding Afflictions. We're not applying many dots, just a few strong ones. But if you want damage, this is kind of what's left. Otherwise, you can use one shot, one kill. That will help a bit in mobbing, especially when you don't have amp up. But then again, it has no bossing applications whatsoever most of the time. So, but it's better than nothing. And if you're really tryharding, you could maybe use In the Zone and aim down sights after applying a dot, and that crit damage could apply to your dots. If you want to do that, go ahead. As for how to play this, let's first go over the bossing. Here I want to maximize my crit chance by summoning specters. But since I'm summoning inside the boss arena, they have to be kinetic specters because elemental specters would immediately or nearly immediately steal my Prismatic Ichor proc. After that, I swap back to my Stellium, shoot reload to activate Prime Potency, and then proceed to shoot Radix through his feet or his hitbox in general so that the splash hits a second time. For some other bosses, like on this example, you can just summon outside the boss room and not have to worry about summoning kinetic specters. You can also do combos like summon 2 specters and 1 Reaper, which will sustain the specters for a bit longer while you make your way to the boss. For mobbing, unless you really want to summon specters, you can just spam Reapers of any element and forget about it. They will sometimes rob your Ichor, but not too frequently, and it shouldn't be a problem. So you can just rely on that Grim Reaper for the first area you clear and then start using your cooldowns, and you should be fine. Just shoot reloading at everything you see. When a stronger enemy spawns, then you should be worried about maybe getting your imp up and making sure you have Ichor available to use. But it shouldn't be anything too difficult. The main mechanical stress of this build is really on the bossing, and hopefully Gearbox will fix Ichor and also make it less anti-synergistic with its own skill tree at the same time, because it's really kind of questionable the way it works currently. I'm not even talking about the bug at this point, just mechanically it does not make sense with its own skill tree very much, so I don't know, maybe we'll see a better version of it in the future. One final note is that if you're going to use Protean Cell, you have to figure out sort of per boss when's the best time to activate it. And it won't always be the best shield, especially for prolonged fights. Unless, of course, you just use Teen Witch and ignore that drain mechanic entirely, which is something you can do. But like on this Radix example I'm showing that was also in the overview part of the video, you can see I fit in a slam right after I finished summoning my specters and then swapped to my Stellium to do the usual loop. So it's the sort of thing you have to figure out for yourself and per encounter in regards to when's the best time to actually activate the shield. And that is it for this one. Have a nice day and thank you for watching.